They changed the definition of vaccine in the dictionary so they could continue to inject us with this pointless poison. I had the vaccine for polio. I've never had polio. I was in jail because I spoke against power, because I told the truth about COVID, because I told the truth about the war in Ukraine, because I told the truth about all of these things.
I don't understand why people would want to put you in jail for giving your opinions about COVID or Ukraine. Why would they?
Why wouldn't they?
Well, why would they? Why would they say that Andrew Tate's opinion is so important on Ukraine that we have to put him in jail? I don't buy that.
Okay, because I was the most Googled man on the planet, and I had a huge affinity with the most troublesome demographic for the Matrix, which is the young masculine youth, the people who you need to die in wars, the people who you need to psyop into being slaves to build the roads while telling them that they're not allowed a point of view and they're not allowed an opinion on anything. And I was saying things which was going against the narrative. Why would they sit there and say, we've put together this massive psyop, we're going to convince everybody to inject themselves with poison, and we're going to lock everyone in their houses, and it's all a lie, and we're going to let this one guy who everyone listens to.
Andrew, it wasn't all a lie.
Yes, it was.
It wasn't. There was a new novel coronavirus. Okay, I'll tell you what. I'll tell you what the facts were, and you can then laugh at them if you wish.
Sure.
But there was a novel coronavirus, COVID-19. It was killing thousands of people a day.
Really?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, and I know people who died.
I know people who died before Corona.
Fine, I'm sure people died of lots of things, but it was killing exponentially thousands and thousands of people, and then vaccines were developed at very high speed, and they managed to save, in my estimation, millions of lives. You may not agree with that,
absolutely,
but those are facts as assumed by the body of scientific and medical experts in the world.
The body of scientific and medical experts, you mean the Matrix? The Matrix are a bunch of people who can come up with studies from the sky to say anything they want them to say, so they can use the MSM to purport garbage inside of people's minds. So you end up locked in your house, clapping for the NHS like a performing seal, injecting yourself with experimental poison for the 9th time. It's a lie. There was no reason to lock everyone in their house. More people died from missed cancer appointments than anyone ever died of COVID. People always got the sniffles before COVID, and they've always got it since.
I mean, your sort of cast iron, it was all Matrix, MSM nonsense, is palpably untrue.
Well, I'll tell you why that's not untrue. Let me tell you my personal experience with COVID. I'm an extremely logical person. At the beginning, when everyone was dying, dropping dead in the streets in China, which I never saw, by the way, funny, and the Italian hospitals were full, English hospitals were never full, funny. Me and my brother sat there and said, if this disease is so deadly and can damage us as strong military-age males, then the world is over. So there's no point in hiding in our house. We decided to go to Sweden. On day one of COVID, day one when everyone still believed, we went to Sweden. Why does no one talk about the fact that Sweden was open the entire time? Why does no one talk about the fact they didn't have masks or lockdown or vaccines? My brother and I partied in nightclubs 7 days a week for 3 entire months while everyone in England was locked in their house.
Sweden actually had a number of restrictions.
Not when I was there. It was open.
Not as draconian as we had in the UK, and there are certainly legitimate questions to ask about the scale of our lockdowns. I think people panicked. They saw what was happening in Italy, which had the second best medical healthcare system in the world, and people were dying in massive numbers and the hospitals were overrun. So people may have panicked. But the bottom line for me, it is indisputable that COVID was a deadly pandemic that killed a lot of people. It turned out a lot of older people more than young people, but they didn't know that at the time, not for a long period. The vaccine saved millions of people's lives. There are legitimate questions about some of the boosters, about some of the side effects of the vaccines, as there are, by the way, with all vaccines. But the idea that COVID is some invention by the Matrix to suppress and control its people is for the birds, Andrew. It's for the birds.
It seems the birds and I are friends.
I don't think a smart guy like you actually believes that.
Of course I
And that's
absolutely
one of my problems.
believe that.
One of my problems I have with you is that I think you are intelligent, but I think you also adopt positions that you know are going to get the anti-Matrix mob inflamed. And it's just these all-encompassing views you have. COVID was a load of nonsense. Vaccines are all dangerous and killing more people than they say.
Never said that. I said the COVID vaccine.
Well, COVID vaccine, well, you don't think they worked?
No, of course not, because the idea of
a vaccine... Of course they
worked. The word vaccine in and of itself is that you get...
They save millions of lives.
If you get a vaccine, you do not get the disease. They changed the definition of vaccine in the dictionary so they could continue to inject us with this pointless poison. I had the vaccine for polio. I've never had polio. You got the vaccine for COVID, and you're bragging online how you have COVID for the 8th time, but it's not that bad because you've had 6 injections. It's insane. And please understand my position. Please understand that I'm a person who doesn't believe any of these studies, don't believe any of this garbage, don't believe the Matrix. I'm a person who was in Sweden for 3 months as everyone was afraid, locked in their houses, partying at will. It was perfectly fine. They had a lower death rate than the UK.
They had a much higher death rate than their neighbouring countries in Scandinavia. Did you know that?
They had a lower death rate than the UK.
Did you know that?
It doesn't, no, I didn't know that.
It doesn't matter to you?
Of course not.
So you wouldn't compare them to their immediate neighbours. You'd only compare them to a country in the UK.
If you think lockdowns worked, Pierce, if you think lockdowns...
I think lockdowns were only acceptable as an immediate panic move, which it was, before there were vaccines.
Were you invited to the party at Downing Street, or were you not in that scene?
No.
No? Oh, that's a shame.
And I thought the behaviour...
Because they seemed very concerned about COVID on the TV,
and by the way,
they didn't seem to give a shit as soon as the TV was on.
I thought that was disgraceful. I had a cousin who lost his father who couldn't go and see his dying wife and so on.
It's disgusting.
There were terrible stories.
It's criminal.
Terrible stories.
As a professional, which is more likely? That the government believed COVID was deadly and everybody should be truthfully afraid and locked in their houses, but because they had this spirit inside of them and they couldn't resist the idea of a party, decided to risk their lives to party, or they lied on the television trying to scare everyone and enslave them and lock them in their houses knowing it's garbage, knowing it's a lie, and not caring, and had a party behind everyone's backs so they didn't think they'd get caught. Which one is more likely as a professional, as a logical human?
Why don't we just agree that they were a bunch of rank hypocrites, stupid people who were behaving utterly selfishly, to the extent that the Queen, when her husband, Prince Philip, dies, is in the church on her own, in a mass, with none of her family around her after losing a rock of 70 years, and it turned out the night before, Downing Street had, I think, 2 parties, including a karaoke party. I think that was shameful and disgraceful.
Well,
so we can agree on that, right?
We can agree on that, and we can wake up and start to realize, oh, maybe the government doesn't care about us. Maybe the government lies to us. Maybe they tell us things and try and scare us, but they don't actually care themselves. Maybe all they are is hypocritical, self-interested people.
Maybe they are.